Hello everybody, my name is Daulton Nelson, and today I'd like to give my thoughts on a game I just beat. That game being Spyro 2, Ripto's Rage, the 2018 Reignition for the PS4. Spyro 2 was developed by Insomniac Games, reignited by Toys for Bob and Iron Galaxy, and published by Activision. It is a 3D platformer. About 3 months ago, I delved into a reignition of a Sony PlayStation classic, Spyro the Dragon, and I wasn't impressed. It was a decent 3D platformer with some nice controls and solid presentation, but the experience as a whole left me feeling unfulfilled, especially compared to the 3D platforming greats like Super Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie. But I was interested in Spyro enough to play its follow-up, Ripto's Rage, a game in which I was hearing mixed things about. For some people, they really love this game, while others find it disappointing. Personally, after playing through Spyro 2, I find myself agreeing with the latter group of people, but that isn't because Insomniac hadn't attempted to flesh out the experience they delivered in the previous game. If anything, they added a good amount of stuff I wanted in the original Spyro, like a decent story that feels like it has a beginning and an end to it. Spyro 2 takes place right after the first game, in which Spyro seeks to go on a vacation after defeating Nasty Nork. He hops through a portal to go to a beach, but is rerouted to the Kingdom of Avalar, where its residents are being harassed by Ripto and his two pets. It's up to Spyro to travel Avalar and drive Ripto out of the realm. This story isn't the most complex you'll see, but I like the more simplistic approach for Spyro. It gives the whole game a real early childhood cartoon type of feel. It fits really well. I also really enjoy the voice acting the cast brings for these characters. All of them I felt were on point and enhanced the experience greatly, even the smaller side characters. And of course, the Reignition team behind this PS4 version of Spyro 2 do a fantastic job with the visuals. Like the last game, everything looks detailed and high-end. There isn't a frame in Spyro 2 where I think the developers shortchange you here. There's even some dynamics thrown into the visuals for a game that looks a bit more varied. Of course, I should also mention that Spyro 2's reignited engine is mostly the same as its predecessors, so Spyro still feels great to play. For the most part, I was still having problems with the camera when rushing and head bashing. I especially don't like the choice of decreasing the camera turn speed while these actions are happening. But along with the added story, great graphics, and well-rounded input, there are also abilities you can gain as you play through Spyro 2. Right out of the gate, you're given a hover move while gliding, where you can press a button near an edge to get some extra height and distance. You don't use it much in Spyro 2, as I felt there was less of an emphasis on gliding, but I love that such a move was added to the game in general. Another new ability Spyro gains is swimming, where he can dive into bodies of water where gems, pottery, and aquatic adversaries can be found. You can't use your fire-breathing move while submerged, which makes sense, though I think the camera can be a bit too close to Spyro during these segments. I also find it strange how the vertical controls for the camera invert when swimming. It definitely makes the act feel disorienting whenever you first dive in. You can also gobble up small rocks and such, and spit them out at foes. This is a pretty cool deviation from the norm. Finally, Spyro can climb now as well, which is neat, though I think the climbing speed can be a bit too slow. As these elements have either been added or stayed consistent, there are certain other elements in Ripto's Rage that either regressed or failed to impress, and in quite huge ways. Like its predecessor, Spyro 2 feels brief despite its standard 7 to 8 hour playtime. Some of that is due to it simply just feeling very similar to its predecessor. Again, this is most likely due to the whole reignited trilogy sharing the similar technical aspects between them, so this isn't a reflection of the original software. There are also the mini-stories that play out within each level, which are these mini cutscenes at the beginning and ends of each stage of Ripto's Rage. I guess Insomniac put these in here to give Spyro 2 a larger sense of scale compared to its predecessor, but all of these stories don't contribute to the larger plot as a whole, so these levels end up feeling disconnected from the rest of the game. Plus, a lot of these stories and stages end up being really forgettable, which brings me to my biggest criticism of Ripto's Rage, and what makes it so disappointing from its predecessor. Pretty much all of the levels in Spyro 2 are really short, and lack any interesting challenge. In fact, by the time I got to the end of each level, I felt as if I had really accomplished nothing on my own. Rather, a majority of Spyro 2 felt like going through the motions to get the required stuff I needed in order to progress. Of that stuff, you have the returning gems, which can be spent for upgrades and progression. There are also these energy balls you get for defeating enemies, which unlock power-ups in the stages. But the collectibles that Insomniac make you collect that are the most disappointing and questionable, in my opinion, are the talismans and orbs. The talismans are objects given to you at the end of most of the stages in Ripto's Rage. They're required to collect to take on 2 of the 3 bosses in the game. They're kind of like the stars in Super Mario 64, only I wish the former was implemented more like the latter, as not only are these talismans not very interesting to collect, but in the final third of the game, the talismans end up getting shucked and forgotten, their function replaced by the green gem-like orbs. These orbs can be collected as soon as the game starts, and you primarily acquire them by completing missions in the game, not unlike what Super Mario 64 does. In fact, I wish the talismans were cut entirely, and you were primarily collecting the orbs as you need 40 of them in order to beat the game at all. The talismans end up being a disappointing distraction rather than an enhancement. Honestly, a lot of Spyro 2 plays like it's playing catch-up with then contemporary 3D platformers, from the gained abilities to the addition of these talismans. It's like Insomniac wanted to imitate what other companies were doing with this genre at the time, but the limited capacity of the PlayStation causes the things Insomniac adds to take away from what a majority of what the original Spyro had that made it so great to begin with. And that's why I'm giving Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage a final score of a high 3 out of 10. A lot of this software feels underbaked and forgettable. Instead of sprawling, enjoyable environments, you get dull and forgettable short stages. And while Spyro 2 does add elements I like, this was stuff that should have been in the original software to begin with. Like, this was stuff its contemporaries already had done, and done better before Ripto's Rage came out. And it doesn't help with these short stages being so forgettable, dull, and disappointing. And that's what makes Spyro 2 so disappointing. Spyro the Dragon was a good base title to build upon, but I guess building in this case meant that Insomniac had to clear some of their solid foundation that they had laid out. That concludes my review of Spyro 2. If you like my reviews, you can like, comment, or subscribe. I also have my social media links down in the description below, as well as a link to my online portfolio to see game design works that I have done, as well as a link to my Backloggd profile to see my scores at a glance. And with that out of the way, I hope you have a nice day.